Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Hey, cool kids. Good advice. I'm here at Ipswich Station, and I'm just me today. Sam is off in Helsinki, as he normally is, and I'm here at Ipswich Station. It's the 27th of May 2023, and I'm off to London on a train to go see Rival Consoles at the Barbican, and I thought I'd take you along with me. Let's do this thing. I'm on the train now, which, because we're in the UK, means I am now poor. I don't really know when I first heard of Rival Consoles. I know it was around the time that I discovered a lot of electronic music like John Hopkins and probably Boards of Canada and some of the more obvious electronica, interesting music. It was sort of a step away from techno and something that was creating soundscapes. I also got really into bands like Kiasmos. But out of all of those bands, Rival Consoles is the only one I've actually seen live. First saw Rival Consoles during the Persona album period. In fact, it was the album launch show, and it was at a tiny little venue in London, just in the basement, and it was rammed. It's one of the best gigs I've ever been to in terms of sound, and I was just really impressed with the performance and the way that your man, Rival Consoles, obviously not his real name, the way he creates music. There's a fluidity and a movement, a real life to the music of Rival Consoles. So seeing them again at Norwich Arts Centre, again another not a massive venue, so going tonight to the Barbican is going to be an interesting experience to see how he fills that area. I just remembered I did see him at the Electric in Brixton. That was pretty big, but anyway, it's going to be a cool gig, and Hainbach is supporting, so I'm very much a fan of Hainbach's YouTube channel, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to do. I'm meeting up with Matt, otherwise known as Fantastic Rectangles. You may have seen him, you may have heard him on this podcast before, but for now I'm going to go to sleep because I've travelled to London on the train so many years that it has quite a narcotic effect on me. So
we are now approaching Colchester.
Thank you, train lady. I've arrived at Liverpool Street in London. Why is the floor so sticky? It's a weird thing arriving at Liverpool Street on a Saturday evening. I always very much get the feeling that everyone's drunk, or certainly more drunk than I am, which is not at all. And here comes Matt. Let's see if Matt's going to say hello. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Alright, yeah, I'm good. You?
I'm all right. Fun journey?
It's alright, yeah.
Let's get a pint. Barbican's weird as a venue. I'm looking for people. Oh, right. It's very strange. It feels like we're in a university or something. Oh, right. There's people queuing. Nope, they're not queuing to see Rival Consoles. They're queuing for sandwiches. Right. The thing is, if you come to a metal gig, you can tell where the gig is. You just follow other metalers. But sort of something like Rival Consoles, haven't got a clue.
How are you?
Yeah.
I'm finished.
Hey, brilliant. I got asked what was in my bag, and I'm not wearing one. I'm just that big. Hey, the gig is done. I'm back in Ipswich, and I'm sat in my pitch dark garden with Matt Reed. I keep calling you Matt. Does everyone call you Matt, or you Matthew?
I'm Matt. Yeah,
Okay.
Mostly. I don't care, but most people say Matt. It's easier, isn't it?
Fair enough. So we're back from the gig, and I've just looked at my notes, and Hainbach was remarkable. I was really amazed, having watched YouTube videos of his and being really interested in just his general ethos and approach to music. Hearing him in the Barbican Centre was brilliant. I think partly because that room was so perfect acoustically. I wasn't too sure when he first started. I thought it might have sounded a bit thin, and then this bass kicked in, and it was loud but pure and clean, and just a lovely creamy bass sound. And I've made some notes about Hainbach, and I've put that it really surprised me how much it undulated and motifs came in and melodies that you suddenly realise were quite dominant, but you hadn't heard them start and come out. I found the whole thing really fascinating. But Matt, what do you think? Because you know more about Hainbach than I did. What did you think of the set?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I expected, and I expected it to be incredible. It's very organic, and he mixes up kind of rigid rhythms with like intuitive off rhythm, out of nowhere kind of sounds, and he just balances the two so well. And the textures are, you've got really gritty stuff mixed with really smooth stuff, and stuff that is predictable mixed with stuff that's unpredictable, and the balance is just incredible, and the end result just feels right.
There was a lot to watch as well. He was running massive tape loops. When I say massive, they were 3 or 4 meters out from whatever device he had with him on stage, and the stage at the Barbican's massive.
Yeah.
And he, at the start, he said that Ryan, aka Rival Consoles, was on stage with him doing the visuals. So it had like a huge hanging screen, but I know I enjoyed it, because when it finished, I noticed 45 minutes had passed, and it really felt like 2 or 3 minutes. But there were a few people in the room who wandered off.
Yeah, the thing with Hainbach is it's fairly close to kind of traditional music in terms of, scales and rhythms that you're used to hearing, but it wanders away from that slightly. Like I say, you got the kind of unrigid rhythms and stuff, and it also wanders in terms of, kind of notes from a musical instrument that you'd not normally hear, because they're in between the keys on a piano. And I think some people just are uncomfortable with that because they're not used to it. It's unfamiliar, but I thrive in that, like the unfamiliar and the in between. I think it's great.
That was one of the things that I found really interesting about it. It wasn't predictable, and it's really hard to explain. But if I pitch it against something that I think is sometimes difficult about that kind of music, it's kind of, a friend of ours calls it analog soup, and it wasn't that at all. It had highs, lows. There were some quite challenging sounds. It sort of, some bits verged on noise, but on the whole, I thought it was a incredibly cohesive bit of music, really.
Yeah, the thing about the kind of unpredictability and oddness and weirdness of it is, yes, it is that, but where it pivots in an odd way, in an unusual, surprising way, it pivots towards something that's pleasing. It always lands in the right place, and more often than not, if something's kind of out of the blue, it'll end up somewhere out of the blue. But Hainbach's set kind of landed somewhere in the blue. Is that the opposite of out the blue? It landed in the right place. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. It was very good. And then, before much longer, Rival Consoles were on. Matt made a dash to the loo, and I carried our drinks in, because there was a sign up out the front, which I'll put in the podcast notes on the Beat Motel podcast website, that said, if you're not in there for the start of Rival Consoles, you're going to have to wait outside for 20 minutes, basically. Which, when I first saw it, I thought was a bit rare, but once the set started, I could see why he'd done it. And I've seen Rival Consoles a few times before, as I mentioned in the intro to this episode, but I've never seen him in a completely controlled environment. Seen him in art centres and small venues, and I think having the gift of a large venue like the Barbican that you could seal off and completely control the room in terms of the light, the atmosphere, the sound and everything, it kind of made sense. If you had people chatting and wandering in with Usher's torches flashing around, I think it would have detracted a bit from those first 20 minutes.
Yeah, I can see why he did that. I think the main driver behind that, the motivation behind that statement would be, make sure you catch it all, make sure you're here from the start, with a side of, please don't interrupt, because other people have been here from the start, and he wants to present it as one whole unbroken, uninterrupted piece. And from seeing how it evolved from the start to the end, it all stuck around the same kind of themes, but still kind of weaved quite far away and back into that theme. And I think, I can't imagine having seen it, from 5-10 minutes in, it wouldn't be the same for sure.
Now, I think having seen him a bunch of times before, this is the first time that it felt like he was reaching something that he's been trying to attain. It was a performance. It was nearly 2 hours long. It was long. He must have a stronger bladder than I have. But when I've seen Rival Consoles before, it's always good. But before, I could easily pick out a bunch of tracks from the various albums, and this time it was a bit more like I could pick the occasional bit out, the occasional bit I recognised, but it was a lot more of a performance. A bit long for me, if I'm honest, but I can't remember how much the tickets were, and it was a comfortable venue, and the sound is really good, so I don't think anyone minded. I saw a few people leave, but it's a gig in London, and people have to catch trains and buses and stuff.
Yeah, I think the room just lends itself to, well, all sorts of music, but especially something that's kind of full range. You've got that deep bass and that twinkly highs and everything in between. I think he was, like you say, he was pulling bits from his albums, but he was also improvising to the room. And when I say to the room, I mean that, you know, the four wall. There weren't four walls; it's a round room, but the walls, the roof, the floor, not the people sat in it. He was trying to kind of tune what he was doing to resonate properly off those walls, off those ceilings, off the acoustic treatment. And I noticed the walls have these kind of hollow, diagonal shaped tubes with slots in them, and
it looked like a massive church organ or something right round the lining all the walls.
Yeah, like an oversized church organ with no actual organ attached to it, just the pipes. And yeah, it's the room's all, like, most of the surfaces are like wood, and it just sounded great the way everything rang around, and the room naturally kind of balanced all the frequencies nicely. I didn't see either Rival Consoles or Hainbach paying too much attention to their mixers in their sets, and I think that has a lot to do with the room. Just like, get it vaguely right and the room will fix it. But it sounded incredible.
Yeah, I think that it's been the peak Rival Consoles performance, even if I did have to dash to the loo just before the end. But on the whole, absolutely brilliant night. He's very much, Rival Consoles very much achieved something, reached a zenith. Is zenith the right word?
I think there's a windows and doors company called that. That's all I can think of.
So if you need new windows and doors, Zenith Windows in Ipswich, right? Anyway, I say we're sat in the garden at about 1:30 in the morning, so I'm going to call it quits there. Thanks for listening. Now, you might be expecting some audio from tonight, so as a final goodbye, here is some audio from Rival Consoles at the Barbican in London tonight.